Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, Winnipeg Free Press, Micropayments and the Customer. Thank you very much for joining us. I hope you've all managed to log on okay and can see and hear me. I'm Scott O'Neill, and I'm currently heading up MPP Global's operations across North America. As you can see, the webinar is called Winnipeg Free Press, Micropayments and the Customer. And joining us today is Christian Panson, VP of Winnipeg Digital. We'll be discussing today how the newspaper introduced their revolutionary micropayments model, and also, what the key challenges they faced in introducing that. Naturally, with a short window of time, this will be hosted at quite a high level. But if you do have any other questions, I'd be delighted to discuss anything that interests you in greater length following the webinar. Just a couple of housekeeping points before we get started. We'll be taking questions at the end of the presentation, otherwise the webinar can become a little disjointed. So please don't be shy. If you wish to ask a question, click the icon to raise your hand as demonstrated on screen, or alternatively you can type your question and we'll try and answer as many as possible. During the course of today's webinar, we're going to be discussing the challenges facing publishing, some of the options in moving to a digital paid content strategy, the role of content monetization, and also what the future might hold. Digital first publishing is fast becoming the norm, but publishers are facing challenges engaging with customers in this digital age. These challenges can range from technology to changing customer attitudes. Things such as ad blocking software and the use of social networks for information are on the rise, and these are serious concerns for publishers. Christian, what issues did you see at the Free Press in your run-up to launching your digital strategy?
Well, there really are so many challenges that are facing us as publishers, and many of them that I'll talk about today. They certainly aren't unique to the Winnipeg Free Press, and probably not the first that you've all heard about it. But maybe I should start by setting the stage a little bit and tell you a little bit about our organization here. What we've been up to. So the Winnipeg Free Press is 143 years old. So that's about 12 months older than the city we serve. So we really have become a fabric of the community. We are an independent daily publisher. We publish seven times a week and deliver home delivery 6 days a week. Our circulation in print is really about in around the 80,000 print copy range. Now we also have some that's home delivered, a little bit more when you add in the single copy sales. Our catchment is about 1 million people. Now Google tells us on our site that we have many more than that coming to our site every day, if you believe that aggregate type Google numbers, and really for 143 years the Free Press has prospered and really grown strong. We have the largest newsroom out of any other news media organization in our marketplace. In fact, if you added all the other news organizations together, our newsroom is still larger than theirs. And so we've strongly focused on local news, and we have a pretty good following for that. So for the last 135 years, life's been good as a broadcast medium. Revenues have been strong, and we've been profitable and managed to grow and build a very strong brand. Unfortunately, things are changing. I won't say that the print model is failing, but it's certainly in decline. And where I would say though is our digital model is failing. What we had up until 18 months ago simply wasn't sustainable. Well, we were under pressure from so many areas, and I'll talk about some of them individually. The odd thing is that for years we thought audience was king, and the fact that our audience is growing even today should really make us feel good, right? If you want to advance this slide, Scott. So yes, our audience is growing. basically, a recent audited study of newspaper publishers across Canada showed that the Winnipeg Free Press was way up at the very top of our reach as far as our market was concerned. We reach about 80% of adults in the Winnipeg area on a weekly basis. That's the biggest we've ever had. Even when our circulation was quite a bit bigger, we were maybe reaching 76 or 75%, and a lot of years we were in the 70%. So, our reach is larger than it ever has been. Unfortunately, the breakdown of that reach is changing, and so just like other publishers, we've got a lot of readers online. We've got a large audience there, and we have our steadfast readers in print, but those are declining. Unfortunately, the declining print readers are those ones are worth so much more than the added digital readers, and we have to find a way to bridge that gap. The other issue that's facing us, obviously, is our share of voice is actually shrinking. So we've got this reach. We've got 80% of the audience in Winnipeg, but a few years ago, we were the loudest and longest voice in their day as far as media. Today, that's not the case. I don't even know if we would rank in the top 3 or 4 based on different social media. If you said Facebook and Twitter might have a bigger voice, and they're getting information from all over the world in real time. And so really we have to come to terms with the fact that our monopoly, our influence has gone. And so there's, then you face in the fact that for years we thought that ads could pay the way, and that's why we made our site free and gave everything away, and ad rates are simply being forced down. I mean, our ad rates, I challenge, or I'd love to know anybody who's driving their ad rates up. The reality is the massive amount of inventory available on the internet is going to continue to drive ad rates down, and as we shift more to programmatic and those kinds of things, you'll see even greater shifts downward, I believe. So, there's so many challenges in our marketplace, and our traditional model in print, though still paying our way today, does not translate that well to digital, and we need to find new ways. And so really, all these factors put it together to really triggered the changes that we made and the changes that we've talked about today. And really, I want to say that I won't be negative throughout this whole webinar, because some of the things that we've done has had some really, really promising results. And if, I'm sure many of you are here to hear about micropayments, but we'll talk about a few other things as well. And although micropayments and personalization doesn't really equal a material shift in turning our digital fortunes, it's definitely going in the right direction. So we'll talk about that in more detail. So Scott, if you want to continue on.
Hi. Yeah. I think there was a bit of a problem with the webinar software then, but yes, continually evolving your brand's proposition is critical to the success of your paid content strategy, as you've said. And publishers need to continually look for ways to target and respond to their audience on a personal level through products, offers, incentives that engage with individuals. Metered paywalls have become synonymous with digital publishing, and for many, this is the right solution. For others, the metered paywall is too much of a threat to website traffic and advertising revenues. It's important to consider an array of business models to support digital publishing and to maximize revenues from your content, but a paywall alone is not a digital strategy. As Christian mentioned, we're going to talk about some of the different things that we're seeing publishers doing, and one of these things is really data. Data is now allowing publishers to do so much more. It provides the ability to profile users and collect behavioral data. And this behavioral data then gives you the opportunity to optimize and personalize the user experience. So this data can then be, it can then be used to tailor subscription packages based on individual reader habits, creating membership models, weekend only or special interest packs that appeal to your users on an individual level. User data and website data can also help you identify opportunities to open up your paywall and host happy hours, with the understanding that you are continually gathering valuable user behavioral data. You can then utilize this intelligence to refine your business model, help drive up visitor numbers, and offer potential subscribers the chance to try before they buy. Behavioral data can also help you optimize the user experience, servicing more relevant content to your audience, and additionally can help advertising work more harder by targeting advertising based on user interests. Another area of increasing interest to publishers is a move into retail, specifically tailoring purchasing suggestions to readers, providing entry into the retail market and a lucrative partnership opportunities. The ability to record user behavioral data also enables publishers to provide a value-based alternative to traditional subscription paywalls. Pay-as-you-go publishing, the micropayments business model, it gives users the option to dip in and dip out of services and only pay for the content that they read. This value-based business model has been seeing success on both sides of the pond, with Blendle in the Netherlands and obviously with Winnipeg Free Press in Canada. Christian, could you tell us a bit more about your particular journey to implementing a paid content model and kind of why you went down the micropayments route?
Sure. Yeah, basically about 18 months ago, we determined we'd held off. First, I should mention that we had held off implementing a paywall. In fact, we were the last Canadian major metro publication to implement a paywall this past July. And the main reason why we were doing that was we certainly saw some success with publishers who locked down their content, but we saw limited success. We saw that there were certain segments of the audience that weren't being monetized effectively, and that even in a metered environment, which has probably been adopted the most across the world, certainly there were issues in the way it rolled out. But we got to a point where we couldn't wait and watch any longer. Free just was not an option for us anymore. Our scale and digital advertising rates just doesn't support that model for us in any fashion. Now, having said that, we had all the same nervousness as everybody else in implementing a paywall about losing revenue that we did have, and so we did structure our solution in a way to salvage and maintain as much of our current revenue streams as we could. As an example of why free really didn't work for us, and why we weren't too worried about losing. I shouldn't say we were not too worried. We had reservations about losing traffic, but in the end, we knew that even if it was a necessary casualty, we did an exercise, and basically what we did was we took our top 30 journalists and we counted how many page views their articles generated online, and based on those page views, we multiplied them by a nice healthy number of ad impressions that we could serve based on those page views, given the fact that most people aren't running ad blockers we'd hoped. So we times it by 4. Now 4 is pretty healthy considering maybe not 50% of our traffic, but a big chunk of our traffic is mobile, which certainly doesn't get 4 ad units per page impression, but we were wanting to be as aggressive as we could, so we times it by 4, and then we times, divided by 1,000 and times it by $6, so a $6 CPM, which we thought was a fair CPM. Certainly, when we sell local advertising, we sell at a higher CPM rate, and I know there are publishers who can command an even higher CPM rate than $10 or $20. But in our market, based on the amount of inventory that we could sell locally, the amount of national inventory that can be sold by our partners at premium rates, and then balance that against the remaining inventory, which is sold via programmatic or remnant providers. Really, our average CPM probably doesn't go above $6. So we did all that together, and then we said how many of our authors would be profitable based in this calculation. And I'm going to put Scott on the spot here and ask him how many of our top 30 journalists do you think were profitable?
Oh, I would say it must be somewhere in the region of 20 to 30% of them.
I wish. That would be wonderful if that was the case. In fact, only 2 authors cover their salary, and one of them probably wouldn't be profitable, but would pay their way. The other one actually made us some money, mainly because she's part-time and writes an advice column and gets lots of page views. So really, it kind of puts it into pretty sharp focus that as I shared with my counterpart and friend in Halifax, who does the same, is faced with the same choices as I have been here, is that digital has been living in their parents' basement, in the print's basement for a long time, and hasn't had to pay their way. And so we could feel good about the revenue we generate, but most of the assets we get, somebody else pays for. And so in an environment where we don't have print paying for those authors' salaries, ads can't support it. We would be closing our doors and folding up operations pretty radically without print. And so as long as print is lengthening our runway, we have to do something to change that reality. So 2 authors. That's it. Pretty stark. And I know I said I wasn't going to say any more bad news, and that really isn't going to be. That's going to be the last one. So if you want to advance the slide, Scott, that'd be great. So we sat down and we said, if metered environment isn't quite enough for us, or it's not going to build an environment where we could prosper on, what would we do? And so the first thing we did was we looked at our audience and we said, what do we know about them? And it turned out we knew very little. Frankly, even our print subscribers, we know that we deliver a paper to an address, but we don't know anything about them. And digitally, we only really had large aggregate data shared to us from what Google Analytics or Universal Analytics in the last year or so was able to share across our digital products. And so it was a pretty big void. And so the number one thing we determined we needed to do was to learn about our audience and make sure that what we were designing made sense to them. And so we deployed a real-time analytics package from a company called C-Sense, another very bright company, and we engaged with MPP to initiate and install a login wall. And we did that slowly. We did the login wall relatively slowly. We slowly inserted it with some options to skip login, but after about 6 to 8 weeks, we forced all our users who were going to read more than 2 articles to log in. We thought that the results of that would be losing a great deal of our page views, and here's the good news: login walls are worth it, and if you roll them in a way that is measured and careful, you will lose almost no traffic. I would say we lost maybe 2% of our traffic in forcing login. We were hoping we would get 70,000 people logging in. We got 180,000 registered users. Suddenly we went from having almost no data to having tons of data. From that, we started to break those groups down. So we broke our audience into 3 large groups right off the bat. Since then, we've broken them into so many groups and analyzed different segments. But at that point, we were only really looking at 3 different groups, and they were what we call one and dones. These are individuals who Meter serves very well because they have no idea what a Winnipeg is, never mind where it is. If they've ever been to our site before, they don't remember, and if they ever come back, they won't remember being there before. So they come in off of social. They will never even register. They won't share any information with us. They come in and read and leave. So these are our least engaged users, and the likelihood of getting any further monetization out of them is minimal. So we let them through our wall. We do have a metered environment, and I'll kind of explain how that works later. But it's a very low meter, and we let those one and dones through, and we serve them ads. Then the other two groups are returning readers and loyalists. Now, loyalists are reading hundreds of articles a month, and these are the people who, these are the people who would most likely convert in a metered environment, right? They are going to hit that end of that meter and want to keep reading. So a meter would address these individuals. The other group, though, the middle group, which is about probably 50% of our total page views, are returning readers. And these people are people who may or may not hit a meter each month. And certainly if they did hit a meter, they wouldn't see the value in crossing it and jumping over that paywall. So really we looked at these three groups and we said, what's the best way to proceed in monetizing them? So what I will say right off the bat is we did not approach this project and say, hey, we got to build a micropayment solution. Actually, micropayments came out of our exercise in analyzing how we could monetize these three groups. And we really went, and we didn't really isolate the groups at first. The first thing we did was say, how do we convince people to pay? And what it comes down to is, for people to pay for a product, they have to value it. And so we said, how do we build value? And we went back to a very traditional, economics 101 type formula, and that is value equals benefit minus cost, right? And so, based on this formula, how do you amp value? Well, you increase your benefit, right? So you do things to make the product that you're selling much more beneficial to its consumers. And at the same time, if you can reduce cost, then you also increase the value proposition. So that's really what we set out to do. We looked at both of those variables, benefit and cost, and really aggressively targeted. I will come back to benefit, but the first thing I'm going to talk about is cost. And really, you probably already kind of get that cost is price, and certainly. A micropayment system allows us to bring price right down. But there are other ways that you can measure cost. Certainly, it can be measured in cognitive load. How hard is it for a user to understand something? How much commitment? Commitment is a huge cost. How much effort it is? How much a user has to engage before they get the value out of their product. So really what we did was we analyzed this stuff and we said, how do we drive value? And so the obvious one for us, and Scott, when you have a moment, move forward. The obvious one for us was to reduce price, right? So reducing price, that's what really triggered our interest in micropayments. But it also allowed us to debundle, and that's a concept that many of you will have heard already, where other paywalls have gotten to a point where they saw no further organic growth at their base rate of subscription, and felt that the way to open up the door to more niche audiences was to debundle, and so offer out your sports section or offer out arts and life at a reduced rate, and that's all they. If they subscribe to that, they get their arts and life, and then they have to deal with a meter elsewhere. Well, we thought that micropayments and allowing people to decide exactly what they were going to buy was the perfect solution to debundle, because everybody can build their own bundle. So reducing commitments is a big cost. It is a massive cost commitment. And so we sought a solution where we didn't have anybody who had to think too far forward when they were making a purchase decision. And so we didn't implement a wallet, a pre-filled wallet. So many of the other solutions in the marketplace required that. And there were some solutions. Scott mentioned Blendle, and they've been very successful. And we spoke with them a few times during our design phase. But they have a wallet, and you have to actually refill it before you read content. We felt that was a big commitment, and the reason why is when we were researching this, we read a number of studies, psychological studies, about how people don't actually connect very well with their future selves. So In other words, we don't reward our future selves. That's why so many of us don't, so many of us max out our credit cards and don't pay them down, or so many people don't save for retirement. It's that we are disconnected from our future selves. And so in a metered environment, when a user reads so many articles, so say it's a 10 meter, they read their first 10 articles, we teach them that the value of those articles are 0, and the 11th article is worth $13.99, $16.99, or whatever our all-access subscription's worth. And the person only wants to read one more article. So to them, the 11th article is worth a huge amount of money, and they have to put themselves in a position where they either know they're going to read another 50 articles after that, or they're going to abandon, and most abandon. And we thought wallets were the same way. We felt that if you got to a point where you had to drop $20 into a wallet, you have to know that you're going to get future value out of the product. And so we wanted to avoid that. So there's no preloading of a wallet. No contract. The other issue with commitment is I got to pay for this forever and it's going to come out on my Visa card every month. There are no contracts. If you want an all-access digital, all you can eat, yes, then you are billed once a month. But other than that, there's no contracts and there's no minimums. So if you sign up to engage with us on a micropayment level, we reduce all those kind of barriers, all those issues with people not wanting to move forward. Now, the other thing that happens, though, and this may be what many people, even when they think about a micropayment, is how many times do you want somebody making a purchase decision? And really, we don't want people making purchase decisions. And even when we talk to folks, talk to one person at our big national paper here, Globe and Mail, and they saw that even in a metered environment, people were making purchase decisions. They got to their 8th or 9th article, and they slowed down. Their velocity slowed down, and they attributed this simply to the fact that people are still put value on those last free articles, and they don't want to use them up indiscriminately. And so we wanted to avoid purchase decisions. 27 cents isn't very much, and what we're seeing from our users is that they're not worried about it, which is our article price, which we also did a lot of research on, and we can talk about that later if we have time. But we implemented a refund. So any article, you can see a preview of it, and when you click on it, any article that you don't like, you can refund. And then so the other things, just kind of wrapping this up, is because we have no commitments and no minimums, users can dip in and out of the service as much as they want. So if they use it intensely for a couple of weeks, we'll charge them for what they use and they haven't refunded. And then if they go away for 3 months, we don't charge them. So we only charge them for the actual articles that they consume. So how does it all work? So this is what we set up. So I want to kind of share with you the user journey a little bit, and you'll hear me talk about customer journey a few times here, because everything that we did was about approaching the solution from the customer's perspective and making it as easy as possible for them to do business with us, giving them as much value for the time that they spend with us as they could. And so basically what happens is this. The first 2 articles that a user reads, they see no difference on the site, as if the site was completely free and wide open. There's no price tags, there's no metered warnings, there's no upsells. It's just basically an open site, and those flyby people get that kind of experience. Once you read the 3rd article, you're asked to register. And if you register, as a reward for registering, we give you a 30-day free trial. We try to keep the registration requirements very minimal. So when we first launched, we only required an email address, a password, and a couple of consent boxes checked. You did have to click a verified link that was delivered to your email. So those 180,000, I think it's 189,000 now, accounts that we were able to build over the last 9-10 months, those accounts are all verified. We also ask at this point for a credit card. And when we launched, we didn't, but we wanted to get as many people who had pre-registered through a trial period, because we relaunched our site as well. So we redesigned the site. We also actually added some staff and improved some of the content on the site, and I'll talk about that in a bit. But so basically, at the point at which they sign up, they get 30 full days, and then from there, during that 30 days, They're also subscribed automatically to some newsletters. And during that 30-day cycle, we then give them a chance to experience the full news site. They have full access during that period. So e-edition, all our content is wide open for them. But they can also kind of practice paying. So what happens there is all those trials are treated like read now, pay later customers, which is what we call our micropayments customers. And so every time they click on an article, they see a little box come up, and after 6 seconds, actually, we have a delay of 6 seconds before a charge is levied. So if anybody accidentally clicks on an article, they are not penalized. They just hop out, and they're not even charged. So after 6 seconds, a price tag comes up, shows them that they purchased the article. It actually has a red strike through it, and in the menu bar, we keep a running total of all the articles they've read. And that is also struck through during the trial period with, if you put your mouse over it, it says you will not be charged for this. At the end of that 30-day trial, when they arrive on the site after 30 days the next time, they're greeted with a message which basically says, thanks for trying our product out. We hope you liked it. Based on your consumption, we recommend one of two choices. And so if you've read more than 50 articles, we recommend All Access Digital, which is a charge of $16.99. And if you've read less than 50 articles, we actually recommend that you go read now, pay later. So we are trying to give a fair opportunity for our readers to pick the product that's right for them. By the way, all readers get 2 free articles a month, even after they sign up for Read Now, Pay Later. Every 30 days, we still give them 2, so they are not being penalized for actually have an account with us, just like any other reader who comes to the site. They get 2 free. The other thing I should mention that all charges for our Read Now, Pay Later are post-pay. So, we actually get them to put a payment on account, but when they buy articles, they are not charged for them for 30 days. So 30 days after their first article, we then tally up everything and do a charge out on. So kind of coming back to the value, that's kind of how our payment platform works, and it's really important to establish a flexible payment plan. And I'll talk about some of the benefits of that, what we've seen come out of that a little later on when I talk about the results. But I'm going to go back to the value equation a sec and talk about benefit. So if you recall, again, we talked about value equaling benefit minus cost. So we brought cost down as low as we possibly could. But how do we increase benefit? And this was a little trickier because we all had an initial response to this question, how do we increase benefit? And I'm going to put Scott on the spot again here, and I'm going to kind of ask you, how do you think a newspaper can increase benefit to their readers?
Well, deliver more relevant content to them?
Well, I think, that's a really good answer. We didn't actually even come up with the relevant part. We said, let's give more content to them. Let's hire more staff. Let's produce more news. And that sounds like a really logical place to go for benefit. But when we started to dig in a little bit and started to dig at and this was data that we already knew, but never really reflected upon, was that over the past 8 years, probably longer, 10 years, I've been with the paper for 8, going on 9, I guess. We have thrown more resources at digital every single year. So we've beefed up our website, we've delivered more news, we've delivered it faster, interactives, streaming video, cover it live type events, every single year without question, and I would say most people in the audience has probably found this as well, we just continue to throw more at the digital wall every single year. And yet when you look at our numbers, sure, Google says our unique users gone up and our page views have gone up, but for the average user, there hasn't been much change. And that is that for our average users over the last 8 years, they have viewed about 6 pages, 5 to 6 pages per visit, and they've spent about 4 minutes on our site. Even though every single year we add more content, richer content, better content, faster content, yet the average user doesn't actually engage with us anymore. So to kind of put it into perspective, we publish about 350 pieces of content a day. That's an average number. Some days are higher. About 50 to 100 of them are locally produced. The rest come through wire services. We have a number of those. So if you think about the average user and you say, well, they're going to visit 6 pages, and say a couple of those are content pages, so article pages, and the rest of them are landing pages, they may be exposed to maybe 15 headlines. Each page, maybe they see 50 pieces. So we surface 50 pieces of content to them, and a couple of them they read. But if we're only surfacing 50 pieces out of that 350, then there's 300 pieces of content that they're not even aware existed. And I'm guaranteeing that a lot of them would have loved to known and maybe read about those contents. Maybe the 50 that we selected for them, because that's how we managed them, were not the right 50. And so what we determined was more content was not the answer. What we felt was the answer was using our content better. So being more specific, more relevant to our readers, could deliver a higher value to them. And this is what we did. We basically did some semantic analysis of our content. So we had a much better understanding of our content. We then also did low-level user profiling. So we recorded every article that a person read and built profiles and lookalike audiences for that audience or for that user. And then we overlaid those two together to deliver content. So I'll let the cat out of the bag here. It works. But let me tell you a little bit of how it works, because what you won't see on our site is a little box that says recommended for you. We kind of skip that whole step of trying to recommend content just over on the sidebar. We said if we're going to do this, we need to do it at a low level. And so every single page of our site, the content is flowed in by marrying a kind of complex algorithm of what our editorial teams thinks is important, what our audience in general thinks is important, so what is trending, what stories are gaining velocity, and what an individual user by their past experience thinks is important, and finally, what users who look just like that user think are important. And then we serve that content up, and we serve it up in a dynamic fashion across our site, which is a continuous scroll. And so anybody who's in the audience who's thinking maybe has editorial responsibility is saying, but are we giving up editorial control? And we don't. We absolutely don't. We have configuration in our web CMS that allows our editorial team to determine a value between 0 and 20 on every single page of how many articles they want to select for our readers. And on a breaking news page, when there's lots of stuff going on, they set that to 20. On an average day, they probably keep it at 10. But on an inside page like World, Arts and Life, they're usually at 0. And so basically what happens is when a customer arrives to our site, the first few articles are selected by our editorial team. As they scroll down that page, we then take the remaining articles from the individual placement list that's targeted to that page. So if it's local, we grab a chunk of the remaining articles in that placement list and personalize and serve it up to each individual user. So each individual user will see a different set of articles from within that placement list and see them in a different order. As you scroll further and further down the page, though, we rely less and less on editorial curation and even placement lists. So on the breaking news page, if you get 2, 3 scrolls down the page, almost everything that you will see will be served up to you from across our site based on your personal past behavior, what's trending, and what people who look like you have been engaging with. And I want to share those results with you today because they really are impressive. We were very happy with them. We did do some very limited A/B testing before we rolled this out. But because there was a lot of changes involved in rolling out our login wall, I can't tell you one-to-one what triggered a lot of these numbers that I'm sharing with you. There's a few that can only be triggered by content recommendation and personalization, but some of them could also be triggered with better content. I said more content wasn't the answer. We did actually hire additional editorial resources When we locked down our site, we also added customer service, which was very important. In fact, we possibly scaled back our customer service a little too early. That might be one of the lessons that I would leave for you, is that customer service is so important. But we did hire editorial people. We hired web developers as well to enhance the content. Those editorial folks aren't targeted with creating more content. They're targeted with creating better content. So what were the numbers? Well, our average active time actually increased by 20%. Now, what we define as active time is how much time an individual spends with each piece of content, either a landing page or a story page. So increasing it 20%, which it hadn't changed at all for 8 years, is a pretty big number. Now, we're not talking huge amounts of time. In most cases, it's adding 10 seconds to each piece of content that somebody views. But it's significant in the fact that we can't attribute that to anything else that we did. This could only mean that the person is more engaged with the content that they're interacting with. The other thing that we did was we jacked up the page views per users. So this is something that, page views are falling out of fashion in the industry in general, because as a measure, as a metric to evaluate success, because you can fake them. But if you fake page views, your average active time actually decreases. It doesn't increase. So in our environment, we were able to almost double our page views per user by doing this. And again, we did lots of changes. So is it all personalization? Maybe not. Maybe some of it is the site's better to use on mobile, or it's a more appealing presentation. But we do think that personalization played a part in that. When you add in active time and page views, our total user duration over doubled, which is fantastic. So for the first time in 8 years, we broke a 10-minute mark for average users on our site. So again, you can look at that number and you could say, well, yeah, but you've locked down your site and some of your site traffic is reduced, so maybe that's why your user duration has gone up, and certainly that plays a part. But we think is a combination of everything that we've done. Now, initiating the paywall has also had a few other wonderful halo effects I want to share, and something that we didn't necessarily anticipate. And this isn't necessarily personalization at play here, just in general the way we approach the paywall. We allowed all our multi-day home print subscribers to have full access to the site as long as they activated their accounts. So we didn't do a price increase. Many papers did when they rolled out a paywall. We did not. We felt that we wanted to reward those users, and we felt strongly about that. Just like we focus strongly on every one of our users and try to give them the best experience that they can. What basically happened was our print erosion fell by 50% almost immediately. So we didn't stem print erosion, but this time last year it was in the 7 or 8% year on year. My circulation VP shared with me yesterday that we were at 2.5% of the previous December. So we have basically slowed erosion to a point where maybe it could be explained by our aging population declining even. So that was a really tremendous impact, and it really settles any kind of fears that investing in digital is going to threaten print. In fact, activating your print subscribers and getting them engaged in multiple platforms actually keeps them longer. So that was a tremendous thing. And as you see on this bullet point, we've activated 45% of our print subscribers. That's actually higher than that now. We're probably closing in on 50%. Our goal for 2016 is actually 60%, and I don't know if we'll get there, but that's our goal, and that's a really important goal because that's going to set the stage for continuity between print and digital. There will be a day when we will print less often, and we want to make sure that the print subscribers who are paying us right now for the service of having news delivered to their door will continue to pay us to have news delivered to their devices. So it provides some stability for our circulation revenue. And then the final thing that I want to talk to you about today is just really what we did, what we went from. We went from about 800, I would say, 800 logged in users on our site, and only a fraction of them were paying us anything, to today, we have over 32,000 active digital readers who have a paying relationship with us. So these are people who are all access digital, they are read now, pay later, or they are print subscribers who are actively using our digital products. So that's a huge, huge, huge distance that we've traveled in really such a short amount of time.
Thank you, Christian. Very insightful information there. It's clear that you've put a lot of thought into developing and launching your digital strategy, and you've obviously seen some great success. I wonder if you could tell us what was some of the key factors in selecting a top technology vendor for this project.
Sure. You know what? I mean, the choices that we had were relatively limited actually in the micropayment environment. We knew we needed to find a proven partner who could help us get there. We had very short timelines as far as rolling out our as you know, Scott, when every pressure that I put on you to get things live, we had very short timelines as far as taking this from concept to live. And for any of the audience who are wondering, we actually took everything live in about 7 months. That's all the development we did, all the development MPP did, and so we really moved very quickly once we had the okay from our ownership to invest the money and engage with our vendors. But to kind of come back to your question, we were looking for a number of things, and so we did talk to Blendle, and we talked to a few other micropayment providers, but none of them really fit the bill. And this is why. First off, we wanted to have, we didn't want to house our credit cards. Okay, we wanted to have whatever company would actually warehouse our credit cards for this to limit our PCI compliance. So we had to find a vendor that had a proven track record of taking care of credit cards and personal payment information, and knew their way around PCI compliance. And so that was number one. Now, most of the micropayment people out there have very little track record. They've been around for 6 months or a year at the most. And there's a few more now, by the way, who have contacted me since we've launched to talk about what we did. But all of them are startups. And so they really don't have that proven track record. The other thing that and I've already talked about this a lot, but one of the things we absolutely wanted was post-pay. We didn't want customers to have to pre-fill a wallet. And every vendor we talked to worked on the wallet scenario where you had to actually drop down a certain amount of money into your wallet before you could engage with the content. And we absolutely didn't want that. The other thing that we wanted to do was maintain full control of our customers. And that's twofold. So we had worked really hard approaching this as we implemented our data wall to maintain a proper single sign-on. So all our customers come to us. They no longer have to remember multiple passwords to log into our e-edition or visit our auto site or comment on our site or log in to manage their subscription. In the past, those all happened via different access points, and so it was a big job just bringing all that stuff together. And we weren't going to let somebody pass our users over to somebody else to re-register again on somebody else's platform. So we absolutely had to have it work with our single sign-on. And then finally, we wanted the payment relationship to be maintained with the Free Press. And we've done this before. We've passed our customers to Amazon. I know nothing about them. We passed our customers to Apple, and I'm sure many of the people in the audience probably shaking their head right now, thinking about how much audience data we've passed over to somebody else and we've lost control of it, and we weren't going to repeat that. So we wanted to maintain the payment relationship. All the other vendors that we looked at wanted our readers to create accounts on their system, and the payments would go through their credit card acquirer. And so when somebody bought articles on our site, it would show up as XYZ company on their credit card, and we didn't want that. And so it made it pretty easy appointing MPP because they were the only vendor who didn't want to actually get in between us and our customers. You know, there is a premium to be paid when you work with a company like MPP, simply because they're not making money by owning your customer, and they're not making money by handling the credit card transactions directly. but we think that's well worth the investment so that we maintain the relationship directly with our customers. And that's really why we selected MPP.
Well, thank you, Christian. Thank you very much for that insight into your selection process. So yeah, I mean, I think what we've talked about today here is really, delivering the right solution for your readers is the key. And just because other newspapers are doing one thing, it doesn't mean that you should necessarily replicate that. I think the message is don't look at your neighbours, but look at your readers. As we have seen with the Winnipeg Free Press, they looked, listened, and learnt before implementing their strategy. The digital user of today is more sophisticated than ever, and they're expecting a richer experience and a deeper connection with the brand. Readers need to care about your content if they're going to pay for it. One of the historic challenges with publishing has been getting users to pay for content at all. But consumer attitudes are changing, and the willingness to pay is on the rise. The benefits of knowing your customer are clear. By understanding your readers, you can surface more relevant content to them, and you can ensure that you're implementing the right business model that's going to work for them and that is going to deliver, add to your bottom line. This will enable you then to by understanding the deeper relationship with the readers, you'll be able to reduce churn and increase the opportunities to cross-sell and upsell complementary products. So before we finish up for today, just a number of, I think, key takeaways from my side. I think it is vital that you deliver a digital strategy that's in tune with your audience, and you also deliver content that's relevant for them. Reevaluating and optimizing your business model will lead to more conversions. By having a flexible platform that can be easily implemented across a number of different business models is really key to that. The power of data intelligence cannot be underestimated. Data is driving the digital economy today. As we've seen from some of the things Christian talked about, without understanding the data, they wouldn't have seen some of the success that they've had with implementing their digital strategy. Christian, do you have a number of takeaways you'd like to consider also?
Yeah, sure. You know what? In general, and I talked about this all the way through the presentation, considering customer journey, considering your customers, putting your customers first. If you want to keep them, you have to do that, right? You just have to focus on values, and you have to focus on those individuals. I'm not saying that you can give always, but always focus on them and do what's right for them first. And the rewards will be that they will come back and that they will engage with you. The other thing that I emphasize a lot, and I'm going to repeat here, is reducing barriers to entry, right? We talked about no commitment and no preloading wallets, and if we could have found a way that a customer didn't have to give us a payment type and they could still pay us, we would have removed that too. So look at your system, evaluate what you've put into place, and ask and be really hard on yourselves and say, what barriers have you erected between you and your customers? If any of those barriers can be removed, do whatever you have to get rid of them. And the payoff will be more customers will convert. Every point of friction that you insert between your customer and the product that you want to provide for them is going to generate erosion in and a drop-off rate. And then finally, I'm a big proponent, as you can well imagine, use audience data to personalize their experience. That's really the only way I believe that you can really amp the benefit that you're going to deliver to your customers. Give them the content that they need, when they need it, in a fashion that they want it. And that's really what it comes down to. And we are examining, all sorts of other ways where customers can personalize their look and feel, build their own sections, remove content that we're feeding to them. These are the things that we're exploring, because the more that we can deliver to them at the exact right moment with the least amount of noise and the least amount of effort for them, they will reward us by hanging around. So always focus on making the experience better for your readers.
Thanks, Christian. Well, it just leaves me to thank everyone for attending today's session. I hope you all found it useful. And before we close up, I'd like to invite any questions from the audience, either by raising your hand. And I think we do have someone who's raised their hand here. It's Dana. Let me just unmute you, Dana. Hello, Dana. Do you have a question for Christian?
I do. And I just typed it in. Do you have a break-even revenue goal, or are you judging success based on reader growth?
No, we actually have revenue goals as well, but we're measuring in both. And this is really kind of is a really good question, and really I didn't get a chance to talk about this yet. We have sold on the micropayments side about 150,000 articles to date. We want to triple that in 2016, and we are on a trajectory to do that. But one of the things that and I meant to mention it in the last slide. One of the things that we have seen, and I think it's we all experience it personally as consumers as well, is the idea that getting somebody to go from paying you nothing to paying you something is much harder than getting somebody who's paying you something to paying you something more. And getting somebody to cross that payment threshold is really the power, I think, of micropayments. Because once somebody's comfortable sharing their payment information with you, once they've paid you once, they'll pay you again. And so what we see is this natural funnel, right, of people who don't know who we are, to people who become trial users, to people who become read now, pay later users, to people who become all access digital users. And we're not sure yet if we have hit our plateaued as far as our launch growth is concerned, because we launched in July, and we've had basically, there hasn't been a week that has gone by since July that we have not added a considerable amount of read now, pay later customers and all access digital customers. They're both growing basically daily. It would be wonderful if we had actually hit our launch, already surpassed our launch growth, because that would mean that what we're gaining today is organic growth, and that means that will probably be sustained. Although I can't say that yet. It's only 7 months in. But yes, no, our goals were. What we want to hit is we want to hit 4,400 all access digital subscribers by the end of this year. We are ahead of our target already. So to share with you, our number as of today is 3,599. So we're one short of 3,600 incremental all access digital subscribers, and we almost have an identical number of read now, pay later customers. So what we'd love to hit is 10,000 read now, pay later customers by the end of 2016. We're not sure if we will get there or not, but that's certainly our goal. And then there is, we want to generate at least $1 million in incremental revenue in 2016. But having said that, micropayments are only going to be a fraction of that, but micropayments, we feel, are an essential part in continuing that organic growth of the all access digital. We felt that when we started and evaluated the system that we could hit 3,000 all access digital subscribers. And we've certainly surpassed that. We thought we would hit that in 12 months. We've certainly gone well past that after 7 months. In fact, I think we hit that target after 5, I think. So we're doing kind of right along where we thought we would be, and then we had the halo effect of having so many print people activate. We didn't expect that. We also had the wonderful results of our print retention solidifying after we launched the paywall, and we don't know how long that will solidify for. Maybe this time next year it'll start to decline again. But another thing that our VP of circulation shared with us is that if we take our print subscribers in December of 2015 and we compare them to our print subscribers of 2014, which I'm sure all of you do on a month-to-month basis, And then you add in All Access Digital, the incremental digital subscriptions that we've added within the last 7 months, and you ignore the Read Now Pay Later. We won't count those numbers. Our circulation has actually went up in December 2015 as it was in December 2014. And I don't think in recent memory we've been able to say that we've grown our circulation.
Thanks for that. I think we have one more question, Christian, from Tommy. I'll just unmute. Hello, Tommy. Do you have a question for Christian or myself?
What's the percentage of users that request a refund for Read Now Pay Later customers?
Well, that's a great question, because we expected, if anybody's heard of Winnipeg or knows about it, we got a reputation for being extremely thrifty here. In fact, many franchises will use Winnipeg as a test market, because if it can succeed in Winnipeg, it will succeed elsewhere. When we rolled this out, and when we even talked to our ownership group and other people in the building and said, we are going to let everybody refund any article that they read. So basically, it creates an environment where they pay what they want. They could read 100 articles and refund them all. We do have a fair use policy in place, but we haven't had to enforce it. So we had anticipated that we could have a very large amount of refunds, and we were okay with that as long as they're paying for some. Some stories, we figured 27 cents was better than nothing. What actually happened was the opposite of that. We had very few. In fact, we trend on a day-to-day basis below 2%, typically in the 1.2% refunds of our content. And not a single user has abused it. So the people who are refunding are paying for 10 articles and refunding one, or paying, and some are not refunding any. So it's at such a low rate that we are double down with our effort in promoting the refund. So every Read Now Pay Later customer, we serve ads to them alongside the house ads to them alongside the article, saying that we guarantee our news. We put a ironclad guaranteed money back guarantee down. If you don't enjoy, if you don't get value out of this, please click the refund button at the bottom, because we think it's so low, maybe people don't understand that they can do it.
Very interesting. Thank you, Christian, and thank you for your question, Tommy. I think we have time just for one more question. We are running over slightly, but I have a question here from Jim. I'm just going to unmute Jim. Hello, Jim. Do you have a question for Winnipeg for Christian or myself?
I had two. One of the questions you've actually sort of partially answered, which is you've got sounds as though they've got about a 50-50 split between people who've paid for all access and pay as you go. What's your average number of articles served for the pay as you go people? Did you have a stable figure, or is it all over the place?
It's actually all over the place. At first, we had originally targeted as many as, hoping to get as many as 40,000 Read Now Pay Later users. And we had hoped that they would spend around $1 a month with us. In actuality, they are spending around $3 to $4 a month with us. But that is highly variable. So what will happen is if we have some slow news days, then our individual articles sold on a given day may dip to 500 or 600, and then on a really good day we shoot up to the 1,500-1,600 range. So we quite literally are, we can quite closely link the amount and interest level in our content to the amount of products sold. Now, the other thing that I can say with, and it makes sense, because a lot of, we do have news from all sorts of different sources on our site, but our local content is primarily what sells. Okay, so I mentioned that we have published about 350 pieces of content daily, and a quarter of that is that represents about 80% of our article sales, and so we felt this would be the case. and it has proven true that that the content that our people are valuing is the unique content we generate, and so that does lend credibility to the notion that we should continue to be content creators and not just content aggregators. Now, having said that, we wanted to limit cognitive load when we rolled out this change, because obviously micropayments in articles really hadn't been done in any great fashion, certainly not in North America, and virtually none of our users knew what it was all about. And so a large education process, right? We made videos explaining how they refunded, how they figured out their account, all those kinds of things, to try to educate them. So what we decided to do was we would keep as many of the variables, changing variables, minimal at first. So that means every single article, regardless of its source, is either 27 cents or free. Now, very few of the articles are free, but we do any time that we have matters of public safety, those articles are free. So a missing person, bombs being sent through the mail, which we had, unfortunately, boil water advisories, anything like that would be a free article. And during our recent federal election, we also opened our site up and said all the federal election coverage, because we felt that to support democracy, we needed to have that open. So we made those all free for the week before the election. So, but other than that, we don't differentiate. If it's a wire story, we charge 27 cents. If it's a local story, we charge 27 cents. If it's a one paragraph story, we charge 27 cents. If it's a 300 paragraph story, we charge 27 cents. And that's really only because we have to limit the cognitive load on our readers. Sometime in the future, we may decide to do just exactly what Scott mentioned, things like happy hours, right? A happy hour might actually, we may have free, or we may drop the price down to 10 cents during that time. So, but again, we're so new into this. We're moving carefully. We inserted so much change in front of our customers that we're careful about doling out future changes. But there are a lot of opportunities, even with the micropayments, doing variable pricing, for instance, doing pricing based on market segment, doing pricing based on time of day, doing pricing based on age of content. Of course, there's lots of ways to spin that. But yeah, so.
Thanks very much for that. So we just have a couple of brief questions coming over the chat. Firstly, yeah, we'll be making the presentation available on the MPP Global website, the recording of the webinar. And yeah, if anybody wishes to get in touch with Christian following the webinar, or myself, I mean, if you can just, you can get in touch with MPP Global, and I'll put you in contact with Christian if that's okay with Christian, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the things that we have to do as an industry is we have to share every bit of information we discover through our exploration. I think we also have to be innovative. We have to try different things, and you know, to not sound too much like a startup, because we'll never be a startup. You know, we have to be willing to fail, and we need to fail fast, and we need to fail loud, so nobody else does the same thing or can learn from it. So I'm happy to share any information. We're very transparent. Okay, well, Christian, it just leaves me to thank you very much for joining us on this webinar today. I think we'll all agree that it's been very insightful. You know, if anyone does have any follow-up questions, don't hesitate to get in touch, and we'll respond back to you. Thank you very much for attending today's session. Take care. Goodbye. Bye-bye.